all you Gretas and Shutezcots out there. Welcome to Unit 5, the last one of the semester. We are Section 1, Land Use and Concepts. So, starting in your packet, here is one of the examples of a land use. The Dakota Access Pipeline route. We remember the protest from a few years ago. Going through Sioux country. So we have a lot of archaeological sites and other things they did not want disturbed. So starting with, there's a video, YouTube, there we go. The link is in your packet, so you can watch to get more information on that, but the controversy with that. So we're starting with Tragedy of the Commons, which we did mention earlier this year. So imagine an open pasture shared by multiple cattle owners. Each owner increases the herd to maximize their benefit. If it's unregulated, this is logical, since the benefit is enjoyed by the individual and the impacts are shared by all. This will lead to ultimate overgrazing of the pasture. So if you are at carrying capacity, great. You are fine. Everything is sustainable. If you go over that, then you are at a depleted resource. So the tragedy of the commons applies to lots of different environmental things, environmental, economic, and social issues. Main one that we are talking about will be the greenhouse gas regulation related to global warming, because we are all dealing with that. So next thing we're doing is externalities, which is a big, fun, fancy word that just means the cost or benefits of a good or service that is not included in the purchase price. So if you go to a farmer's market, you may notice that things cost more there. They're bringing more of those externalities into the price because they have to, because they're a small business, as opposed to the subsidies and stuff that don't have to be dealt with in the larger things. And it can be positive or negative. So the smell of a bread from a local bakery would be a positive externality. Air pollution from a factory would be a negative externality. So many economists feel that both either private ownership or regulation are the only solutions to the problem of tragedy of the commons. So everyone needs to own it, or somebody needs to own it, or somebody needs to regulate it. Otherwise, it can't happen. But things like the sun maybe aren't owned by anybody. So in 2009, Eleanor Ostrom showed that groups are fully capable of avoiding tragedy of the commons without this top-down regulation. And there are links to articles both on tragedy of the commons and the first person who came up with that concept, and some thoughts on that, and then a little bit more about Eleanor. If you would like to learn more about her, the links to the articles are in your packet. So evolutionary theory suggests that as a species, we have to be able to cooperate with each other. So think about why this might be so. If you think about our need to survive, and you work better when you work with other people, that's going to help us make it, if you have that support from other people. So all the little bees are working together, ants work together, a lot of female lions hunt in packs, a lot of animals work together for the betterment of all. Nature has figured it out. Humans just need to finish figuring it out. All right, so that is that. So now we're going to look at international categories of public lands. So first one is national parks. These are managed for scientific, educational, and recreational use. They are only 2.7% of Earth's area. And usually there's no extraction of resources in these areas because they're a national park. The positives are things like conservation and tourism. The negative is they can displace indigenous people who had lived in those national parks. Here's an example, Serengeti National Park in Kenya, definitely on my bucket list. Can you imagine seeing these in person? That'd be so cool. There's a video that will walk you through a lot of what we're talking about right now that is linked to in your packet. The second thing under this is managed resource protected areas. So this is sustained use of biological, mineral, and recreational resources. And these are different national forests that are here in the US. So we are using them for some stuff, but very sustainably. So the area is protected, used properly. Here's another example of a national park. Wrong way. There we go. More pictures. Look at him. He's so cute. Number 3 is habitat or species management areas. So these are regular active interventions to help maintain biological communities. So maybe they'll help with fire prevention or predator control because they're trying to help some critters survive or some habitat survive so then the critters can live in that habitat. Next is strict nature reserves and wilderness areas, and this is protection of the species and ecosystems. You can't do anything here, so the animals can live. We have protected landscapes and seascapes. So this is non-destructive use of natural resources with opportunities for tourism and beaches. So a lot of orchards, tourism and recreation. Orchards, villages, beaches, things that are being used but used properly. And then you have your national monuments, your unique sites of special natural or cultural interest. There's 20,000 around the world, which I think are really cool. Here are some examples. Here's like bucket list right here. What I think is really cool. So here's our Statue of Liberty, Christ the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro. We've know that one. The Motherland Calls is a statue in Russia. Ushiku Daibutsu, I'm assuming, is in Japan. There's a giant Buddha in China, and then the Statue of Unity in India. So here is this guy right here. So we're talking 120 meters. Here's the little tiny people. This guy's huge. There's the second largest. There's Buddha. So here's the Statue of Unity. Statue of Liberty would be about here on him. So you could do 2 statues of Liberty for the Statue of Unity. Big statue. So if you look at the United States and you broke up the United States into what all the land is being used for. We've got urban housing, urban commercial areas, rural housing. This is all the food that we eat. This is to grow the cows. The pasture areas. This is to feed all of these things. This is federal wilderness. This is private family timberland. This is clear-cut area, different areas for timber. Wildfires gets their own. Highways, defense gets an area. Wetlands and deserts. This is all cotton. That's crazy. Feed that is exported. 100 of the largest landowning families would take out Florida. That's kind of crazy. Look, Christmas trees get their own. Golf courses. Oh my goodness. But golf is bigger than tobacco and flowers. Wheat exports, corn syrup. We have a problem. Barley. There you go. Maple syrup gets its own. So this isn't really being used for anything in Fort Michigan. So, and here's your state parks. But you can see that raising animals and raising food to raise the animals takes up a huge, huge part of the United States. So one of the things that we can do to make this place a lot more sustainable is to reduce our meat consumption. Even if you could chop it down by a half, look at the amount of space we could have for more state parks or more just forests. That'd be just amazing. So we're going to look at U.S. public lands now. So the federal government is the country's largest landowner. 25% of the country are either rangelands like this, national forests, national parks, national wildlife refuges, or wilderness areas. So one of these places, and they're all are owned by the federal government. They are all controlled by the federal government, and they are in charge of keeping them proper. This is kind of interesting. Portion of each state that is federal land. We just have a little bit here in Indiana. The west part of the United States has a whole lot. A lot of Alaska is this. So just something kind of cool. So resource conservation ethic. We've got 3 things going on here. So people need to maximize the resource use based on the greatest good for everyone. So we need to find a way to use our resources in a way that everyone benefits. Policymakers need to consider the resource or the monetary value of nature, because nature does have a monetary resource, and trees are actually way more valuable if you leave them up than if you cut them down. But as some people don't see that dollar in their pocketbook, they don't necessarily process that. But competing interests are going to lead to Multiple use lands. So multiple use lands may be used for recreation, grazing, timber harvesting, and mineral extraction. So you may have an area where lots of different things are happening on it to make as many people happy as possible. So it might not be the most sustainable way to do things, but if the more people we can make happy, the less issues we're going to have in the future. And then we come to our federal agencies. So 95% of federal lands are managed by one of these four agencies. We have the National Park Service, we have the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Forest Service, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and then the U.S. Department of the Interior, Bureau of Land Management. So if you really like nature, but kind of think it'd be cool to work for the federal government, you could get a job in one of these things and be a federal officer, but also help keep this planet a little bit more natural. So if I am correct, yep, that ends this round of notes. You guys have survived. Before we go, I want to let each and every one of you know that you are special. You are good enough. You are smart enough. People do like you. And if I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good God, do your homework.